Hello and welcome to The Door to Law. My name is Donya and today I'm joined by Waseem Khokhar, who is the co-founder of the Chancery Lane Institute for Professionals, otherwise known as CLIP, which is a legal education provider in Dubai and the first ever outside the UK to deliver in-person teaching for the GDL, LPC and QLTS. Waseem, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Donya.
So you have 25 years legal experience across the Gulf region and the UK. You've been regional managing partner at PwC and EWF law firm. What led you to move away from the corporate career on a full-time basis and set up CLIP?
Great. Well, first, thanks for having me on the show, Donya. Yeah, it's been a long time, 25 years, a quarter of a century. It's a long time to be practicing law. I felt after sort of doing the latter of 10 years as a managing partner of two international law firms that it was time to really get back to my clients, get closer to them, and also to give something back to the community as well, the legal community, and that's what led me into teaching as well. I still do a lot of consulting work in the legal field. I think once you're a lawyer, you never really leave. It's part of your blood, but even if you want to leave, you can't really, you get sucked back in. So I do a fair bit of consulting work for the big law firms as well, but I get a real buzz out of mentoring, teaching, and also sort of part of that whole community that is law in the Middle East.
And one of CLIP's unique selling points is that it does focus on kind of delivering teaching in person, as opposed to maybe some other legal education providers that focus more on online distant learning. Have you seen results that support the view that an interactive learning approach is more effective?
Yeah, so I think we've reached a stage now where expectation in terms of technology is struggling to keep up with technology itself. And we have wonderful things in terms of distance learning platforms and technology, but still we find that a lot of our students, they come to us having already sampled distance learning teaching and have found it to be actually quite a struggle. They still miss that personal touch where they can speak to a real person face to face and say, I'm having trouble with this or I'm having trouble with that. And I think that lack of pastoral care, that lack of interaction face-to-face is what has driven a lot of people back to, I guess, what is more of a traditional, sort of old-fashioned type of way of learning.
You kind of may have already answered the question, but have you at all considered, or do you think in the future you may consider looking into online education, just given kind of the impact of technological innovation, especially in the education field and the rise of edtech startups?
And that's something we can't really ignore, even though our USP, if our core value is around that personal touch, it's a big global market out there, and we want to make our services, our style of teaching available to a much wider audience. There are only so many people we can have in a room at the same time. So we are starting to now pilot and experiment with technology. I think 5G will help us immensely in terms of getting as close as possible to an interactive experience online, and I think this will be a real benefit for us. We will try and stay true to our roots of face-to-face teaching, and part of that will be to have virtual tutorial groups, but also an ability, if the technology allows us, for people to ask questions live and to be part of a lecture, essentially, as if they were there in person. Almost like a webinar, kind of. Yeah, so I think webinars have been great. I think they've become a little bit stale. What we'd like to do, like any sort of progressive business, is leapfrog over the current sort of norm, if you like, which is webinar type of technology, and go to the next thing, to make it really interactive to the extent that technology allows us to do so. So just, looking at legal education today, it still very much does focus on the pure knowledge of law, and we've touched upon technology and its impact, and given the change, the way in which legal services are changing today, do you see a way in which legal education can change to keep up with the pace of change in the legal industry? Do you even think it needs to change? I think it does, and if you speak to people in education, and this is something I've discovered since going into it, is that there is a little bit of a binary environment whereby there are people that are from academia teaching law, but then there are people from practice teaching law as well, and they are very different skill sets and very different approaches. What we try and do is actually combine the two. And what we found is that some of the students that we teach who are actually practicing lawyers have come back to us and said, look, what you taught us, which was technically academic, has really helped us in the way that we negotiate contracts or do other types of legal work. So our approach is that we must combine academia and professional experience into one. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in this sort of environment that you mentioned, where it's sort of very black letter law versus what's practically required in order to be a successful lawyer.
Absolutely, and CLIP has actually expanded its remit since it originally started. I mean, originally it started with the aim of helping people in the region to qualify as solicitors under English law. You're now offering professional services to law firms, in-house companies, and so forth. What's the reason for that, and also what's the long-term goal or mission for CLIP?
Yeah, so our view is that you can't really disconnect legal education from careers. People have become a lot more savvy about what they want to achieve in life, and it's not just about a qualification. As a result of which, we've sort of approached legal education very much in a results-orientated way. What type of lawyer do you want to become? What type of skills do you need to acquire in order to be that lawyer? So we are sort of becoming part of that community, as it were, and generating more sort of direction towards really taking people away from just a professional qualification, but also to make them first-class lawyers. So that's why we've sort of had to step over, if you like, and we've welcomed this approach into professional education as well. So that's continuing legal professional development, but also skills as well around, say, for example, drafting or advocacy. What some law firms have also asked us to do is to help them shape learning and education platforms for their lawyers, so that lawyers who approach and work for these law firms can enjoy a rich and rewarding career that means that they will acquire both legal education and skills along the way as well.
Absolutely, and I think long term that's definitely going to be the future, because it's not just about the pure kind of black letter law. It is about building other skills, even business development, for example, and so forth. So we touched upon kind of the future of legal education, if you like. For any aspiring lawyers, out there, or actually no, any current lawyers but aspiring to be entrepreneurs, what kind of advice would you give them?
Oh wow, so I think we've seen this sort of splurge, if you like, of how technology has enabled people to break out of traditional careers, whether it's law, accountancy, management, consultancy, and get into entrepreneurship. I think Stanford Business School has been a bit of a victim of its own success in that way, in that everyone that goes there now comes out with this desire to be an entrepreneur. I'm sure that they're not the only ones as well. Yeah. In terms of navigating and breaking out of the traditional sort of legal pathway into entrepreneurship, I would say it's all about acquiring skills. It's having that well-rounded knowledge and experience of how things actually work. It's one thing to be able to navigate your way around a commercial agreement. It's another to know how a supply chain works, how intellectual property works, not just in terms of registration and the legal rights around it, but why it's worth what it's worth. Yeah. So it's acquiring those sort of quite well-rounded skills, I think, that would set up anyone, not just lawyers, in order to be successful as entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Waseem. Thank you for coming on today. It's a very interesting conversation. Thank you, everyone, for watching.